Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. This is episode 188, and we're going to talk about a lifestyle you love. And I brought on an expert. Her name is Colleen Gallagher. And, this is going to be great because I know a lot of you guys that your listeners, they're just, you have no idea exactly what that lifestyle is that you want. And for me, it was that transformation from one business to another, and I had to work on it. And it took a couple of years to evolve into what I wanted, but I get to travel the world. I get to do what I want, and thank goodness for these cell phones because they make it so much easier. But welcome, Colleen, and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Rob. I'm super grateful to be here, and I'm excited to definitely have this conversation on freedom and entrepreneurship.
Before, off air, we talked about you and a little bit of the legacy. And for a lot of people, I think legacy is one of those things that they just don't think about. They create a business. And even for me, my first couple businesses were not about thinking, about legacy. What am I going to leave behind? It was always think about, I need something that will pay my bills, and when you think about it on those terms, you don't always make the money that you really want. When you start thinking, when you start projecting into the future and say, what do I want to leave to the next generation? That's when you start making more money. To me, that's just how it seemed.
Yeah, I think it's really important because I lived in a corporate setting, or I had a corporate setting. I grew up to two parents who were lawyers. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I knew nothing about creativity. I knew zero. I was the perfect bread and butter, upper middle class to be, bread and butter for, a great corporate leader. And I would have, that would have been great. It would, I was making $100,000 at 21 years old. I had $64,000 salary, company car. The bonuses were 10,000 plus, all your benefits. It was, with everything included, it was over $100,000 plus, you had to travel and your meals were included. I had a really good 21-year-old life, to be honest. I lived in a beautiful 2-bedroom apartment in Houston, overlooking this beautiful park. I don't know, I couldn't really ask for something better, but there was just something inside of me as time kept going that I wanted my life to have certain results quicker, faster. And I wanted to be around different people. I wasn't happy with, now that these people weren't smart, they all had educations. They all were, even if they didn't, they had been on the assembly line for, almost a decade. Very intelligent in their own right, and workmanship and electrical engineering. So I just felt like there was something missing, because all of my sales calls, it would always come back to relationships, and it would always be talking about marriages with these men who are in their 50s, or their daughters. That was more their daughter's age, and so I just began to realize there was something missing. And then I really started to look at, okay, I'm traveling the world through this money and through this corporation, but what if I could actually go to places that I wanted to go to on my term? Mm-hmm. And this is when I began to start noticing on social media, digital nomadism, people who would hotels would basically fund you to go places and all this stuff. And I was like, that's not quite it. I feel like I need a little bit more business than just hey, let me be a model and flash here and flash here. There's nothing wrong with that. Just me personally, I felt like there was something missing in it. So I started to watch probably hundreds of webinars. I can't even tell you. If I had to rethink, I had 5 or 6 notebooks of just all of these webinars. I'd watch what they're selling. I'd watch their stories. I'd be so who are they? I'd follow them on Instagram. What hotels are watching them? Could I do this with a Marriott? I thought it would be a flight attendant. There was all these things I was trying to look at. And I quit my job and I moved across the world to New Zealand all by myself. And I started yoga and meditation for 4 hours a day. And this is where I finally got the idea to write a book. And this book was about my cancer journey, and it was about how I healed from cancer, my long-term diagnosis. I was meant to be on medication every day for the rest of my life. And as soon as I moved to New Zealand and followed my dreams, it basically was self-healed. My hormones without my medication were regular. And I started to really see that maybe there's more to this mind, body, soul connection. And that's when I hired a mentor and I started to look at what I wanted to do. I hired another mentor for funnels and I created my first 6-week program and I started posting on social media. And I started selling people into my course and traveling the world. In my first year in business, I made $100,000. I went to 13 countries. I started my master's and I started my second book. And I think I had like 5 or 6 programs I launched that year with 2 retreats.
Wow. Yeah. And the thing is that, I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, most people that age maybe would to do 1 or 2 things that you're doing, but not everything that you're doing. And I mean, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was, I don't know. I guess some people might say it's like the cancer. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it was. I mean, I always was very driven. I always was someone who I was like class president. I was like the, what's it called? Point guard for basketball. I was the libero for volleyball. I did pole vaulting and got to states. I was always kind of the one who did it all, I guess, in a way. And I don't know, I just feel like there's those of us who we just know we want more in life. And you could kind of say, I always felt like when I was a little girl, I was obsessed with fairy tales, not like where the man will whisk you away or anything like that. I was just more obsessed with the whole idea of traveling and the lust and the love. And I don't know, meeting new people all the time. I was always really obsessed with that. And I think doing so many things, it kind of let me live in a fairy tale life, but it's I always was able to switch realities in a way. I had this reality and this reality and this reality. And so I was always able to turn on a different light bulb or turn on a different part of me in these different environments. And so I wanted to begin to create my life in that way. And I realized one company, even if that was $23 billion company, had so many products. It wasn't products I cared about. And then so many people would meet me and be like, you've changed my life. Or I would say one thing, I'm like, oh my God. And I learned about life coaching and leadership and development and all these things. And I think my life, I just want to look back and know that it was an adventure that helps so many people along the way. And that includes everything I've done. And obviously so much has been added into my plate since then of 25 courses, 3 books, 7 products, 70,000 social media channel on Facebook. And then we had 10,000 Instagram. We got hacked and now we're building it again. We have all these, I think we're on 45 different platforms, including my podcast, which is a top 1,000 podcasts in global health and wellness, the Colleen Gallagher podcast. So there's just something in me that likes that adventure. And I think we all have that desire. We all have that need. We all have that whatever, but we suppress it because maybe we think it's going to be too hard or it's not going to happen. And I don't know. I could go on many narratives, but I don't think I just popped out this way and it was super easy, right? I went into debt. I learned a lot about money. I was willing to do whatever it took because my mindset was I would rather go for this than die and never try. And I think whenever I'm at a big expansion, that's what I go to. I'm would I be okay with dying and not trying this? And sometimes I'm okay, I would be. Okay, so no big deal. I would. But most of the time it's nah, I'm going to go for it. And you have to cultivate that. And it is scary, but once you have a practice with it, just like anything, I mean, when you first go to the gym, it's so scary. When you first go to yoga or when you first go to I haven't been what's it called? Boxing. I'm sure that would be scary for me, but once you're in the practice of it, right, you get used to it and you create this connection with something greater than you. It's a force, it's a presence. And you start to have an inner dialogue with yourself with this presence. And you start to trust yourself, see the result, trust yourself, see the result. And even if you fail, you don't take it so badly because you're well, you know what? I still am way more forward than I was if I didn't take this. And so it's this crazy journey in a way that I'm trying to explain of an adventure, but it does lead to success. It's crazy even to think what was it? Last month we had a $40,000 month. This month, for the first time ever, we just got a $96,000 check that came in. These are things that are just mind blowing to me. I couldn't even imagine it. 28, I'm who, when I can remember when I first had $10,000 month, I'm who makes $10,000 months? Who does this? And it's just so fun though, when you start to live your life this way.
Yeah. There's also people that I think are afraid of success. So, they look at what they're doing and they're okay, I'm making 100,000, making 200,000. That's good. I don't need to make any more. If I get too successful, then people are going to get mad at me or this or that. And I'm what?
Yeah.
They'll come to me and they say, Rob, we need help with our marketing. Okay, well, this is what I can do. This is what I think you should do. Oh, but what if we get too busy? Can we? And I'm what?
Yeah.
So it's just, to me, I would rather fail and learn from it then say, well, I don't want to get too busy. Really?
I think what's really important with what you said and what I said too, like when I went $100,000 in debt and I also got out of it within the same year, that was like really alarming to me, right? The first thing I was like, who does debt? Like, I mean, sure, like student debt or something, but like, I mean, that just seemed in such a short amount of time, that seemed crazy to me. Like, yeah. And I remember like your nervous system's responding, you're freaking out. And I'm like, just breathe for a minute. Cause everyone's like, save your credit score. And obviously that wasn't like, that did not happen. And so I was thinking in my head though, like, okay, if I was a multi-millionaire, multi-billionaire, and I'm thinking this in my head, would I be stressed about $100,000 debt? And I started listening to like Grant Cardone and different people. And obviously they're in real estate. It's different than my business model, but still they were like, he's like, more debt is good. And he's like, debt is just something you pay off over time. I started to listen to Amanda Francis, who's in my saying like, debt is just something you've chosen to invest in and pay off over time. I'm like, yeah, all this debt wasn't like to clothes. It wasn't to cars. It was all on coaching and mentorship. And it all expanded my mind. Yes, it wasn't through an institution, even though, yes, I have that too, but I still did it. So why am I looking at it like this? And the moment that I did that, something switched in me where I just was like, okay, if I want $100,000 in debt and that's just part of the process, and I just looked at this, like, what if I had 5 million? Would I be thinking $100,000 debt is a lot? Like that would seem such a small, like I could probably make a down payment on a house for $1 million if I had 5 million. Like I just began thinking of these things like much differently. And then what you said with busyness is so important because I hear that too. I've heard that too. However, if you are really committed to the path of legacy and growth and evolution, which I do believe we all are in our own way, then I feel like you can't think of it as busy because every time you're too busy, you're then creating suffering and you are part of the problem on the planet. And so it's always like, whether there's too busy or there's too much, you always want to think of what can I give? What can I be? What can I produce? Because and you'll figure it out later. Like, even if it's not, you'll figure it out later because otherwise you're contributing to the problem of Earth, which is suffering. And if you're an entrepreneur, the reason you're an entrepreneur is you want to make a difference in the world. Otherwise you just bought yourself a job.
Right. And speaking of jobs, most entrepreneurs I know, they'll work 12, 14-hour days. And to me, that is just downright insane.
Yeah.
And I did that to a point. But COVID taught me some valuable lessons. And it taught me because I don't need to work 12 to 14 hours to make all this money. I can reduce my workload. And now I'm only working 3 to 4 hours a day.
Yep.
And I get more work done because I can hyper focus, get it done. And I'm still writing a lot of books and I'm still helping my clients, but I'm doing it in less time. And at the end of that 3 to 4 hours, if I don't have the work done, I just do it tomorrow, do it the next day. There is nothing that I have to get done that is priority to get done today.
Yeah.
And I think that stresses people out when they think that they just have to do it all in one day.
I agree. And I think there's also a point, like when I first started my business, I always felt like, and maybe this is like the corporate mentality too, but I always felt like if I wasn't working, back to what I said, then like I wasn't giving enough, like in a way, like, and it was just really, and maybe that's the cancer too, or I don't know, just the way I've trained myself to think of like, the more I give, the impacts other, the more as I produce, the more others are shifting. Like I have these mantras, right? I've really ingrained into my mind, but it was really big that I had to learn that I couldn't just work. And one of my biggest goals definitely the last 2 years has been really cultivating better relationships instead of just working with the content or the writing or the channeling. Right. And in that, it's been really beautiful for me because I've really navigated that. It's not about the amount of hours you work, right? Because even the most successful people in the world, we all have the same amount of time. It's about the quality of presence you have when you're doing those things. Like one email with total presence to the right person could create the greatest ROI versus 50 little things. And so it's looking at like, what's your intent of doing what you're doing? And like you said in the very beginning, if you're like, oh, I'm just doing this thing for money, but you're not happy, like there's going to be a point in your life when your body breaks down. It's just science, because this is an emotional, it's almost like if you were asking a train to go on tracks and the tracks and the train aren't aligned for each other. Eventually there's going to be a malfunction. The same as with your body. And obviously what you're asking your body to do day in and day out, and the emotions in your body have a frequency and nervous system regulation that also impacts this. So there's so many topics that we're covering that is really important. But I think the big thing is if wherever you are in your life, your business or entrepreneurship is you want to look, okay, what are your values are? And obviously from what you've shared, Rob, if you're here, one of your values is wanting freedom. Mm-hmm. Freedom doesn't mean just time and money. In my core of being, I mean, freedom means the ability to express yourself freely, openly, with the most exceptional relationships around you. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, once you have that, naturally money, time, all those things are going to come because you're going to surround yourself with like a cosmic team, whether they're actually a team in your business or allies that support that organic growth of everything going on. And that organic growth and connection is much more powerful than anything else that can be manufactured.
Yeah. Freedom is huge. When I started being an entrepreneur, it was never about money. It was always about freedom. I wanted to call the shots. I wanted to work when I wanted to work. I wanted to travel when I wanted to travel. And the problem is that first business tied me to a local community. It tied me to a lot of hours. It tied me to, client demand. And I just didn't feel like I had the freedom anymore. And so when I transitioned out of that into what I'm doing now, I have more freedom. I can do what I want. I can travel. I mean, we spent 2 weeks in Germany the one year. It was awesome, Yeah. And all I had was my cell phone, and I just didn't feel. If I wanted to work, I worked. If I wanted to take a call, I did. I just got back from a week in Disney World, and people are like, all up in arms about Disney right now. Who cares? It's my vacation. I had a fun time, and every time I take a vacation, I get more calls. I get more business, and
it's because you're enjoying your life. And that's the energetics. There's an energetics of entrepreneurship that hasn't been talked about before because we haven't had technology, and technology does bring the energetics where people can connect into your business and your frequency, even if you're not physically at a brick and mortar store, which makes this so beautiful because the more that you enjoy your life, or I have the belief system, the more you enjoy your life, right, the more that good things happen to you. It's just how it is. The more that you're happy, the more that you're blissful, the more that you're joyful. And obviously it's not meaning that you have to positive psychology, like being unhealthy amount of happy. Obviously we all have days, but it's like I said, like looking at, okay, I'm $100,000 in debt. How am I going to let this affect me? Am I going to like weigh this, or am I going to transition the thought on it? And the same is true with anything you're sad or upset about or feeling frustrated about. Okay, am I going to let this weigh me down, or am I going to change the narrative that's happening in my head? And obviously that's a practice, right? Things that used to take me 8 months of like sadness, anxiety, and stress, now I can do within, a matter of hours. But again, it's that practice of emotional regulation.
Yeah. And the thing is that as an entrepreneur, you're not always going to be tip top, 100% on, motivated and to do whatever. Sometimes there's going to be days where you don't want to get out of bed. You don't want to deal with anybody, but you know what? Do it. Get out of bed. The moment you get out of bed, make that bed, you've accomplished something, that your day is just going to get easier.
I agree.
And for me, it was always about showing up. And if I can show up and get in front of my computer and do what I need to do, my day's almost halfway done,
I love that.
I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm very sarcastic. That's my superpower. But, it connects people. It makes people laugh. Well, the right people. People that are put off by it, I don't want to do business with them, this year, well, over COVID, we were very busy, but this year alone, I mean, we've doubled our business, and we're not even halfway through the year, and it's just crazy. People just are gravitating towards me, and I was like, wow, it's like all this time, and now you're coming. But sometimes, like I said, as entrepreneurs, it's sometimes it's a patience game. Sometimes
it is.
You do what you got to do to be in front of people, and eventually it's all going to connect, and people are going to go, wow.
I like Jesse Itzler said something. He's Sarah Blakely, who's the CEO of Spanx, and Jesse Itzler has had, many successes with Marquis Jets and coconut water and other things. But anyway, he ran an ultra marathon, and he said something that I thought was really amazing. He said one of his sales people came to him one time and was like, oh, well, they're pushing back on sales. He's like, well, that's the customer's job, is to push back on sales or whatever. So what did he say? And so he said this, but he said, we all get so caught up on just, if I don't make this one sale this year, what it's going to mean. Or if I don't make this whatever this year, what it's going to mean. He's like, but you're not thinking for legacy. He's like, I don't care about the one sale. He's like, I asked someone, I think it was like $600,000. I think it was, or like $1 million loan. Basically he asked for, he took Jay-Z to the, with this money, he took Jay-Z to the front row of a basketball game. And that became his major client for Marquee Jets, which allowed him to get revenue. If they didn't get that client, they like would have almost went bankrupt. But it was like, he took the thing and took that. And like, that's what I think we're talking about with entrepreneurship or money, or what you're saying is like, well, I don't know how to pay the bills or that. Like, it is not that hard to leverage credit or to leverage loans or to leverage all these things. And the worst thing that would happen in your whole life is if you default on a, what's it called, on a bank or on a credit card. Even if you default, let's say even 6 months, probably, even if you defaulted, you're really not going to have that many problems that are coming after you. These are massive institutions and banks, and you're not a corporation. You're, one person that's trying to make it happen through a smaller organization. Even multi corporations, the banks aren't going to like really come after you until it's like something. So it's like, just don't be so afraid to leverage them, because it is just free money just sitting there. And like, it's not that hard to change a paradigm on it and know that if you believe in yourself and you just go, well, what if I believed in myself? What if I trusted the voice inside of me? What if I trusted my passion enough to know that I will not die without trying to make this happen, because it just brings me so much joy. And if you just take one step in front of the other like that, it like you said, it is law. Like, it has to happen for you. It just will.
Well, if you look at, a lot of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time, they've probably filed bankruptcy multiple times to get where they were.
Yeah.
And, so bankruptcy, and having money problems, none of that really matters in the whole scheme of things.
No, money is nothing.
Right. Money
it's
is
just a tool for you to express yourself. It's literally just a tool for expression. And so if you can begin to shift it that way, instead of like, how do I make money? It's more like, okay, how do I express myself? If I could wake up every day and do what I want, what would I be expressing? What would I be doing? How would I be dressing? Maybe, like you said, you would be only working 2 or 3 days a week, and you'd have this content, you'd produce it on whatever, you would have this package, or you'd have these products, and you'd end up getting multiple distributing centers to do it through. So it's like you made one. I mean, there's so many ways you can do it. It's not even funny. And once you do it, you do begin to have more fun. So you think of more ways usually, but just start with one. I mean, I started with one book, one program. Like, if I would have thought more than that, oh my God, my head would have been spinning, And so just start with one. Don't think about the money as I don't have the money. Think of more the paradigm I've talked about of switching is, okay, where can I express myself more? If I could fully express myself, what would I be doing? If I was fully living a life that I want, what would be happening? Okay, cool. From that place, how do I begin to then take the step to leverage money that's already accessible to me to make it happen?
Right. And if you look at your future, if you look at the things that you're doing now, I mean, 9 years ago when I came out with my first book and I shopped it around, and people didn't want simplistic books. They wanted these complicated things and from that, I didn't want to deal with those people.
Yeah.
So I created my own publishing company. It wasn't something that I really wanted to do. But by doing so, I created a whole new avenue for my marketing company. Yep. I have now produced 36 books in 9 years. I produce books for other people, and they're now making money from their books. Creating a product or a course is maybe your next evolution into leaving that legacy for the next generation.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's just start with one product, one service, one thing that would make you feel alive. And to me, it was sharing my story of overcoming cancer. Like, it really was, because it changed my life. And I suffered for 9 years, from like 14 to 20 or 23. I really suffered. Like, I suffered a lot. I felt like guilty to be alive. I felt really angry. I felt frustrated. Like, I felt like no one understood life. I was so angry with everything. Like, I suffered. And so I was like, when I had this awakening or moment, I guess, in New Zealand, like, I always knew there was like different worlds, but when I had this moment that I could do it on my own and I could trust myself enough to make my own life, something changed. And that's when I was like, I have to write about this, because if I could do it, there has to be someone else that can do it. Like, I'm not the only one. And I saw that through people that I was, connected to through within the cancer community. So anyway, I think, just start with one and just know that your life story is what will bring you the creative idea of what solutions have you solved in your life that brought you so much joy. and then began to share that in a way that other people, because you are not the only one who suffered from that. And when you can share that in a product or service or whatever, like books, like what you said, like whatever that it is, you then can scale it and you'll naturally just attract the right people.
Well, even for you, you had this story of suffering, but you turned it into an opportunity. Maybe you didn't know it at the time, but you went to New Zealand. You went to a far off place. You started yoga that was probably so far different than what you were accustomed to. Mm-hmm. And from that experience, you created a whole different empire for yourself. Yeah. And I think that is the scariest thing for most entrepreneurs. For when I started out in the carpet cleaning industry, I knew carpet cleaning because I had worked for other people. So for me, it really wasn't scary because I already knew. But for you, the whole element was probably scary from start to finish. And most entrepreneurs don't know how to deal with that level of scariness. And I think it holds them back. If they would embrace it and say, hey, look, this is a whole scary level. I'm going to document from start to finish what I've done as an entrepreneur. And from that document, create a book. Now they have something to give to whomever, whether they sell it, whether they give it away, whether turn it into a course. It's how they overcame that situation, and now it makes them the authority in what they're doing.
I agree. And I think the other thing that you said I want to make really clear too is that move from corporate to New Zealand, still to this day, that was the most anxious period in my life. I had panic attacks every day for 3 months, 90 days. And when I was on the plane from LA to Auckland, I had a whole bottle of Chardonnay before there. So I could literally I'm not suggesting that to anyone, but I'm letting that's how my anxiety was. Like my brain just wouldn't stop. And so I literally on the flight, like I remember, and I was like freaking out like this. And I'm like drinking my wine, like to be honest, if I'm, really being honest with you guys. And so it's not like, it just was a magic wand. Yes, I believe in fairy tales. Yes, I love magic. Yes, I love entrepreneurship and transforming people's lives. And, so watching people fall in love, watching people make money online, watching people heal their body. It's like, yes, all those things are great, but it did still come from that. So right. I think that's really important to note too, because even with all the other things, if you look online of me, like that is the number one still greatest physical reaction of fear in my life.
So what type of clients do you look for?
Yeah. So we have 60%, 65% men, and then 35% women. But it's really, when people come to me, they're more masculine. So they've lived a lot in a masculine paradigm. That's not men or women, obviously. But what that means is that they've kind of given their life up to have a great life. It made good money. They've achieved a lot of success, but they weren't ever really fully fulfilled. They've definitely went through heartbreak, or they're just wanting to go through heartbreak or about to go through a divorce. I don't mean like they're about to have that huge transition. Right. That's about the space they come to me at, is like, they really know that there's more. They finally want to feel happy. It's like, I made all this money. I lived this great life, but it wasn't a phenomenal life. And now I really want to remember who I am and bring the magic. And that's really the basis of my clients, a lot of them. So I'll get a lot of people who are like, well, how do you do that? Or the linear thinking or this, or that. So most people come from the corporate kind of space, or like if it's a entrepreneur, like a very masculine, like they did it from a corporate space. And now they're like, but wait, I'm missing the freedom. I'm missing the creativity. I'm missing the love. That's the transformation we go through together.
Wow. So you got all this from going to New Zealand and practicing yoga, or was there?
So I've been to 42 countries. I've been all over the world. So like when I started traveling really young, like when I said I love fairy tales, like I love Disney. Like I mean, even though yes, it's controversial with Disney things now, but I love the fairy tale. I don't know. I always was a girl who just, like I said, I love like when I land somewhere and it's like new land, you get to meet new people. Like even if you see me now, I love my electronic shows. If you look at my Instagram, like I just won an outstanding leadership award at this Education 2.0 conference. And then like literally that night I have like jewels that I put on my eye. It's like big makeup, and I'm going to an electronic show. That's like one of my favorite DJs. Like I've always been this multidimensional person where I felt like I've had two different personalities, of this hyper successful, wanting to give transformation experiences to people. And also this like secret, like I don't know, like I'd say like, yeah, it's like a fairy in a way, like secret fairy that likes to like go around and meet people. And then when I'm at these places, I really connect with people. Like all these countries, I have people on Facebook and Instagram that I'm still connected with from like 10 years ago, even like even people when I meet, when I go out, like, it's not like I just go out and it's like drinking. It's like, I genuinely meet people and I'm like, let's connect, let's do this. And then like they're friends, or I sent them books. Like the bouncer last week, I just sent him like 2 books of mine, there's like these things that I meet. And so I always just felt like I wanted to be like almost like this, I don't know, virtual home in a way to all of us, all of those of us who like wants to change the world with love, or want to be the light workers, or be the people who are like the love of our flower children. But like, I wanted to be that home for them to know like they're not alone, and that we all are in our right perspective zones. And then I wanted to also educate them on how to really use and harness that energy, not just to build someone else's company, but build our soul mission. And so that is kind of the way that it happened. But I also had my education in marketing. I mean, I worked for a $23 billion company in sales. I have my master's. I'm getting my PhD. I've invested over $100,000 in personal development and coaching. So there's like a lot of ways that I did this, right? I was just so committed to educate myself. And I think that probably started with my mom. Like she always, both my parents, they were both lawyers, like, but my mom always like, there was no option of like, was I going to go to school or not? It was always like, yeah, like, not that I always agree with that, but like, it was always like, you're going to have an education. There was just nothing. And like, we had more talks in my family about like education than like me getting married. Like even still today, like, it's really funny. Like people now are kind of like, they'll be like, are you going to get married? And I'm like, and even like my dad will be like, yeah, she's probably not going to for a few more years. Like he's like, and it's just funny. Like, I just was always committed to that, I guess. And not that one is better than the other. I think when you educate yourself, you give yourself so many more opportunities to connect with people, like deeply, intimately, to find yourself, your true self, and build relationships that are built on that instead of like a false, manufactured, watered down version of you. That gives you freedom.
Right. I mean, I'm not a big institutional learning. I'm more of self-taught.
Yeah.
And I realized there was always a conflict between what they were teaching you institutionalized versus what I was being self-taught.
Yep.
How do you maintain that balance? I mean, I'm sure you see
totally.
There's some conflict in there sometimes, but
no, I definitely do. I mean, at this conference that I just went to, I definitely didn't, but actually in the institution that I'm at, like definitely like the conference though is people who are actually out there in the field doing it. You know what I'm saying? They're not just, I mean, some of them have PhDs or whatever, but, one thing that I said to you, Rob, before we started this is I feel like we all have soul callings, soul missions, whatever they are. And for whatever reason, a few years ago, I felt like it was one of my callings to get a PhD. I can't tell you why. I can't tell you whatever. It just felt like it was something inside of me, because obviously it's annoying, like compared to even, a $40,000 a month, that's almost what my tuition is in 2 semesters. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't really make sense, even like what I'm making in a month, which was that. So, I think that I think that there was just a calling, and I built my life on a way of following that calling, like just like New Zealand. I knew that I had to live international. I've been to Europe. I Googled and that came, all the things I can't really tell you, but it's like, I just got really good at listening to an inner calling and inner system. And so that's why I chose that. But at the same time, I've also invested over $100,000 in different mentors and self-education and personal development. So I've done both. I think for something like the conference I was just at, I definitely see why the PhD is relevant for the line of work I want to go with there. But I think if you're not wanting to go into like a bigger organizational space, or like be a writer or be a recognized researcher, you don't need it, right? That's probably not your purpose. So I think it's not, don't compare your journey to someone else's. Like, tune inward. Maybe yours is massage, maybe yours is Reiki, maybe yours is texture, like colors and interior design, like all these different things. Maybe it's learning from someone who's been a master in their field and recognized, like Dr. Joe Dispenza or Tony Robbins, and going up their accreditation or whatever it is. You could have that. There's a million ways to do it. I don't think one's better than the other. I think it's just what does your soul calling to?
Yeah, and it all comes down to your journey is your journey, and we can emulate other people and we can learn from them, but bottom line, as an entrepreneur, you do what you love. And if you can make that into something where it enables you to travel, enables your freedom, enables you to, use money as a tool to get what you need, that's more power to you.
I agree.
I used to follow and read all kinds of stuff from Tony Robbins. And then I started reading something from other people. And then I transitioned and I started learning about all kinds of people. And I'm thinking, I don't want to just be like this person. I don't want to be, and I have my own personality that doesn't always jive with what they're teaching. So you take what you learn from other people, make it your own, and create your own system of or ways of doing things that enable you to, be an authority in what you do.
Totally. Yeah.
So where can people go to find more information about you, or buy your books or your courses, or shake your hand, or whatever?
Totally. So my website is colleengallagher.co, just .co, not .com. And then my social media on any of them is the Colleen Gallagher. So that's the best way to get a hold of me, or follow, subscribe, or my podcast, the Colleen Gallagher, which is on every major platform. So any of those.
Yeah. So what's your future look like?
Definitely more books. I would definitely say more books, more retreats. And I definitely think moving into like a leadership and development training, like definitely more like having trainings for specifically around that versus like just magic and fairy tales. It'll still be around mysticism and connection,
right,
but I think it'll kind of upgrade a little bit just from maybe a soul level to a little bit more organizational standpoint.
Right. And here's the thing is that, I even though I'm not a big fan of institutional learning, having that PhD at a young age shows people authority. They see that, oh wow, she's got PhD. I'm going to listen to her more intently. And maybe that's not true on all levels, but there are people that look at those letters behind your name and give you more credibility before even, reading your books or looking at your courses. And sometimes they're the right people you connect with.
Yeah, it just depends. Like there's a lot of people that I met this past week when I was in Vegas that, there are CEOs are on leadership boards of $100 million, $200 million, $300 million companies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those people, right? I'm a business person. I have a corporate background. I've never sat on a board like that. So I don't have that experience, right? But I can give you, this is what research shows. This is what theory shows. This is what's trending right now, right? I can give that. And obviously I have the digital marketing experience. That is something I have, like, it's not just a schooling. So it makes me kind of a double asset, I guess, in a way, where a lot of people, they just have theory, but it's all about lens and perspective, right? Like if you had to talk about something with, publishing houses or relationships or networking, there may be way better people that are more suited for that than me, or definitely accounting or finance so it really is like, it's not so much about the schooling. It's like, what did you do with the schooling experience, or whatever experience you're getting from any career path? What are you doing to leverage that experience to create a better future for yourself? So it builds more trust and credibility when you enter a room.
Yeah. And it makes people feel safe, we all talk about know, like, and trust, but it's also being safe. People want to feel safe with you. And, totally. This was great. We could probably talk for hours and hours, but we're limited to time. And so anybody who's listening, go over to colleengallagher.co, not .com, .co, and then find her on social, listen to her podcast, buy her courses, her books, buy everything. I think you'll really enjoy what you discover from Colleen, and you're gonna be more well-rounded an entrepreneur. So thank you, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Thank you, Colleen.
Thank you so much, Rob.